Where I come from, it's 10 o'clock. Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
I'm going to call this meeting to order. Can we get a roll call, please?
Yes. LeBlanc,
Here.
Fenton,
Here.
Denham, Yancey,
Here.
Meenan, McConnell, Milton,
Here.
Westfall.
Here.
Mayor, you have a quorum.
Not by much. Okay, the first thing on the agenda is to approve the committee minutes from May 26th.
I'll
We
make
had-
a motion to approve.
Second. Second.
We have a motion second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Ayes have it. Next thing on our agenda is a monthly dashboard. This will probably be presented by Ben.
That's right.
Hello, Ben.
I couldn't get Jan to present it, so.
I need, if you would, Ben, this is a temporary system, and we have to really speak directly into Mike.
Okay.
So those that are
You guys hear
listening-
me now? Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
I tried to get Jan to do the monthly dashboard, but he's going to stick to HR, which is probably what he's best at anyway. Before I go through this, our job obviously is to give
Give
you
me a second.
guys.
Does everybody everybody up
I
here?
don't know who
Do we all
you
know
are.
Ben?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. My name's Ben Hart. I work for Baker Tilly. Made the assumption that you knew who I was. And I'm right now the interim finance director. We've got, and I say that, we've got a team of people behind us, or at least me, that works on various issues that I send out to them. This was one of them. This is one of those issues that they work on for me. So what I've been doing is watching your finance committee meetings since the beginning of the year, board alderman for that matter too. But what is apparent in any governing body's mind is the sheer volume of data that comes at you and how to synthesize that down, right? So what this monthly dashboard does is and I put this together as a start for every client we have that we do exactly this for, especially a governing body, is to give you key highlights of that data that you've got and things that I look at. When I pull those spreadsheets open, what am I looking at first, right? So what this does is on the left-hand side, each row is a item. The 1% sales tax, each one of these is a spreadsheet back in the monthly reports that you have. But each one of these rows is a specific item. So 1% sales tax history. On the left, you can get an extended history of where we've been, just as a graph, a picture. To me, a picture means a lot more than just the numbers. You can get a sense of where we are, where we were headed. The big thing out of this one is if you look in 2013 to 2019, budget to actual, we were pretty much dead on, right? And then the pandemic happened and blew everybody's mind. Not just Branson, everybody's mind. What we have here is not unusual from what we see in Kansas City to some of the most sophisticated entities we have in Kansas City. I see the exact same thing. The budget, obviously, the sales tax dropped out, the bottom dropped out of it, with the budget kind of chugging along. Nobody knew how deep that was going to go. And then the reluctance in 21 to forecast anything going up because you just don't know what's going to happen. And there's still some of that lingering thought, right, as we move into the budget processes. Now we're thinking what the inflation's going to do. What's that going to do to sales tax? What's that going to do to people traveling? And so there's key indicators that we're going to be pulling out. On the right-hand side is the current year, which is the light green, if you can see it there. The light green line is the year-to-date through May, right? The budget line is the gray line. And one of the items that you guys had asked for was a comparison of where we are, where we were to budget. The left-hand column shows you the history. The right-hand column shows you more of a right-hand graph, kind of shows you more of an immediate, here's where we are, right? And it's a picture. The reports are still in there, obviously. But overall, 25%, in May, we're 25% ahead of budget. And that's true for all the sales tax, for that matter. And that's only through May. When you hit June, that's when we can start really digging down into a forecast to see what the end of the year is going to look like and the potential scenario that goes out for '23.
And just for clarity, Ben, when we look at these May numbers, and I know our tourism tax, I believe our tourism tax runs about a month behind. Our
Yeah,
sales
right.
tax runs through the state, so it
Right.
runs about 2 months
2
behind.
months behind.
So when we look at this chart that shows May, we're looking at,
Probably February, March is what, those 2 months, mostly March, sales tax, point of sale. So you can
And
go out and
April?
spend money, right. Well, if it's a May collection, it's going to be 2 months ago.
oh, I'm sorry, yeah,
Because it takes them 30 days just to get it through the system to get it back to us.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
And what this represents is the cash in the door for us, not the point of sale, which is how we measure those things. Half cent public safety sales tax is the same way, if you want to scroll down.
Hey, Ben,
Yep,
real quick,
go
what
ahead.
are the dark green columns on the right? So you
Oh, yeah.
said
So those are
actual
last
budget-
year's.
Oh, okay,
Those are last year's numbers,
thank you.
right? Yeah, and please, if I miss something and you need clarification, go for it, because this is something you're going to get every month on top of those monthly reports, is this type of report. Go ahead and go down to the tourism. So tourism is much the same way. The light green, I'm talking to the right-hand side now, the light green bars are this year's bars. The gray line is the budget. And you can see in January, blew the budget out, went way above budget. April and May is the same way. And we're looking at numbers that are the same as sales tax, way above what our expectations were. Obviously, we've got an economist back in Kansas City that forecasted for the Kansas City, Missouri, that works for us. And he's looking at a lot of these numbers the same way and working on a forecast. Okay, what does this mean for the end of the year? What are the leading indicators? Some of the economic factors. In the state of Missouri, we have access to the taxpayers, the commercial taxpayers, so we can actually look by industry. What are the strong sales tax payers by industry? What are the ones that are slacking? Historically, we've seen on the sales tax piece, we've seen pharmacies, hardware stores, and grocery stores doing some of the best business they've done in the last 2 years, and they've really held the cities together as far as sales tax is concerned. Tourism's obviously a little trickier. You've got number of beds and vacancy rates, and a number of things that we'll look at as we move forward. But the economic drivers, local economic drivers, are going to be extremely important in this case. Let's go down to, just scroll down just a little bit so we can see the tourism club by class. This is helpful because it shows the entities that are struggling versus those that are really thriving. And in this case, when it goes tourism by class, we're talking about different classifications of those tourism tax. So here we've got amusement, theaters, hotels and campground, just like the spreadsheet has. Nightly rentals and restaurants are there as well. In this case, the dark green line is the one that is this year. This shows actually 3 years data. It shows 19, 20, 3 years data, 20, 21, and 22 in this information.
It would be very helpful, I think, particularly if this report is available to the public, if
Yep.
there was a legend here
There,
that
we'll put that on
showed
there,
the color
yeah.
coding on
Yeah,
it.
that's a good idea.
Because I was scratching my head when I was trying to figure
Yeah,
out what.
that's a good
what
point.
this
And
was.
also,
Absolutely.
Ben, I know for me, and I'm thinking for others,
Mm-hmm.
if we could, when we're doing these comparisons, if we could compare to the year 19,
Yeah.
2019
As a
was the
benchmark.
last of our regular business.
Yeah.
20 anomaly, 21 anomaly, and so now we're sitting in 22. But to compare
Absolutely.
22 with our last consistent year would be
Absolutely.
helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's absolutely, you're right. Go ahead and scroll down, I think to the key, go one more page. There you go. So what we've done is take it cumulative just to see what the overall picture is. Again, this is 20, 21, 22. It'd be ideal to throw 19 in here just to see what that is compared to what we are now.
It's almost like, I look at it as almost like a constant. It was a
Yeah.
very good year for
That's
Branson.
exactly right.
It was a record-setting year.
Right.
So that's something that That's
Yeah.
my benchmark to try to.
No, you're
compare
right,
to.
and
Yeah.
we'll add that, I'll definitely add that in
Yeah,
this.
thank you.
And heck, I had to add this in and send it back out to you for that matter.
That'd be great.
Yeah, so you have it. Because what we see in 19 compared to 22 is we're still beating 19 on the receipts.
Yeah.
When it comes through sales tax and tourism tax for that matter. On the tourism side, you can see where the public started really getting back out in 2021 in that slope that goes up starting about March, April of last year. And it's a fairly steady slope, and it hasn't stopped when you look at this year's. It's following the same trend. But just in tourism tax, it's going to be the same way. 19 is going to be important to benchmark against 22. Go ahead and go to the next page. So these are a little different. Within the packet, you've got several reports. You've got a balance sheet. You've got a list of cash funds and what's available. And then you've got a budget to actual. We call it financials. And what I want to do here is take your main operating funds and in one picture tell you where they're at, right? And this is at a whole. The reports will actually give you by department. But what this does is kind of give you the whole fund. This early in the year is going to be difficult to make an assumption based on what's occurred through May. But nonetheless, it's important to know where that's at. So the general fund here, the top two are revenues versus expenses. General fund will receive your property tax in chunks, not evenly throughout the year, obviously.
Yeah.
Sales tax is one of your biggest revenue drivers, citywide for that matter. And that is a little more level, but even that's got a cycle to it.
You bet.
So you're going to see that ebb and flow between revenues and expense. Water and sewer is obviously a little bit different. Any kind of utility fund is going to be really reliant on weather. And you'll see that ebb and flow as the weather is part of the picture. So that line right there is okay. The bigger line that we track is going to be that budget to actual. Where's the overall fund sit, right? We expect around 42% of expenses having occurred at the end of May. What this is showing is just under 41%. So we're on track with budget is what this shows.
There again, back to Pam's point, on a legend, it would be
Yep.
great, because if we had what you would expect to see at this time of year would be 41%. It lets us know,
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That we're on
Great.
track.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's exactly why I'm bringing this to you, so we can get that kind of feedback and put
You
that
bet.
in there, what's important to you. General fund budget, water and sewer is the same way, and we're around 31% there. In this case, is the cash balances. It's a little bit hard to see. I need to make sure that we blow that up just a little bit more. What this does is just compare cash balances. You got, I think, 1 year there in the cash balances. It compares prior year to this year. So you see the general fund is up on the far left, far right. You see water sewer fund is up. General fund from the standpoint of sales tax that are coming in, higher than what we expect. There's a number of different things that can occur between those two to make those bigger, those cash balances flow differently. On the lower left is the public safety sales tax funds, or the public safety funds, both police and fire are in there, and what those cash balances look like. And again, this all comes from the reports that are behind that monthly report. I think that's that's the last page of them. So does that, other than your feedback you've given me, does that kind of make sense? Does that kind of capture what you're looking for as far as, if I look at 5 pages, maybe a few pages, I'll understand where I'm headed and what the outlook for the city looks like. So we budgeted one number, how far are we coming in on that number, and then how does it compare to the prior years?
yeah, I think, like you said, I think with the suggestions we made for clarity, and I'm going to suggest, Lisa, that we get the legends and get this updated before we post it online.
Yeah, we can do that. I'll
So
get that
it's more
updated
clear.
today, yeah.
And
Absolutely.
so if I was going to interpret some of this, bottom left corner, in 21, public safety cash balance was
just over 4.5.
2.8 million,
Yeah.
roughly,
Right,
and it's 4.7 million this year. So that's increased by 2 million.
right.
And that's the funds that, is that the funds we're using for our fire department,
Police and fire, right.
police and fire?
Yeah, right. And this has got, and the access, that lower access needs to be a little bit smaller so you can see what the whole name is.
Yeah.
But the first and second there, or I guess second and third is really the police and fire portions of that.
Yeah, I see what you've done. You've taken spreadsheets, and I know they're included in this as backup. But so you're taking the data in the spreadsheets and you're putting it into a graph format for a visual.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's easier to see the picture in comparison than, because the numbers will tell you the same thing, but if you
Right.
don't have an affinity
No,
for
you're
those, then as a snapshot, you guys don't have a lot of time on your hands anyway.
Yeah.
So if I go through 5 pages as a governing body, what do I want to look at? What do I want to know? Here's where we're at.
Yeah, I think
Any
there's-
anomalies then, like in the past, any anomalies we can put then on that staff report up front as we progress. And I think you're going to see a lot more of that as we go into the latter 6 months of the year. Because then we're going to see a lot closer to the forecast changing as we get more and more data.
Yeah, I'm more of a numbers person.
Yeah, right.
But a lot of people aren't, right? And so this is very helpful for those that are more visual.
Right.
I just told
Before-
Cody as a banker, the spreadsheets and the numbers are where I
Are
like
important,
to
yeah.
get in the
Yeah.
middle of. But this is not, I mean, really, for someone to just quickly take a glance, I think
Yeah.
this is fine. I'm glad that we're still providing the spreadsheets so that I can
Oh, yeah.
look at those.
Yeah, yeah. So one of the other things I wanted to ask you guys, the current spreadsheets you get, and I'm really talking about the balance sheet and the budget to actual right now. At the beginning of the year, you've got a rolled up report, and it's still in there. The rolled up report by fund, I think it's around 20 some pages that show budget to actual by department and then for the funds. What I want to ask you, is that enough detail? If I look at those obviously on a line item basis, and then if there's anomaly in that, we chase that anomaly down to make sure it's not going to reflect, a change for the forecast in the end of the year. My thought process is, as we progress in the next 6 months, is we see those anomalies, then we can again put it up there on that staff report, just a short paragraph to show, what's happened. Maybe sales tax are actually higher than what we had expected. There's a certain check that came in that, hundreds of thousands of dollars, just certain anomalies like that we can put in that narrative up front so you'll have it.
You bet, you bet.
I
And
think
so,
that
and-
would be great.
yeah, and what you're talking about right now, if we could, let's scroll to one of our data sheets so I can show you an example of what I believe you just said.
Okay.
Can we scroll down to the tourism tax?
You want the actual spreadsheet, though, the report,
Spreadsheets.
the report itself.
Is that's on the
Yeah, that's on
bottom of this, isn't it?
Yes.
It'll have to be at the bottom.
So, yeah, hold on, let's go to, maybe Exhibit 4. Oh, let's see, what's the first one there? Let's go to the tourism tax. Okay, here's something that what I've observed. Right now, it appears to the public and the common viewer that we are ahead of 2021
Right.
by 22% year-to-date.
Right,
Phenomenal number.
right.
21 was just out of this world, and look how good we're doing. We're 20% above that.
Right.
My caution is, when I look at the last 6 months, on the top half of that, when you look at those numbers, and compare it to previous years. For example, let's look across July.
Yep.
July last year was 2.3 million. 20 was 850,000. Oh, I don't have my little pointer. Get back there. There you go. 19 was 1.5.
Yep.
So if we were looking at how are we trending, I would be extremely reluctant to say, wow, we're 20% above
Yeah.
21.
Definitely.
Because we're heading into, this last 6 months, we're heading into some absolutely unbelievable numbers to
Right.
compare it to.
Right.
So what I'm predicting is as each month goes by, that 22% is going to be declining
Yes.
every single month
Absolutely.
because we're looking at huge numbers to compare it to.
Yep.
So
That's exactly right.
so what you just mentioned, those kinds of heads up
Yep.
of don't get full of yourself, guys. You
Yeah.
don't have, I mean, we're not going to be bringing in
Yeah.
20 million this year.
Yeah.
I mean, last year we brought in 16.8, so don't expect 20,
Right.
right? Probably expect something closer to the 2019 numbers.
Yep.
And there again, only because of those huge months
Right.
of 21.
What we've done with other clients is do, Mayor, exactly what you said. We'll take the actual receipts that you've got, in this case, there's 4 months there, and put 2019 collections over for the rest of the year to see what that would look like.
Yeah.
So if we do nothing else but meet 2019's expectations, what does that look like? How close to budget are we? And then every month that goes up, we start moving it over, right? So that way you can use that 19 as a baseline and move forward. Now, that usually is a fairly conservative baseline. Again, nobody can really tell the future, but right now the trends show. I know when I woke up and saw 100 dancers out at the hotel that wasn't there before, and they've got the restaurant full,
Right.
and all over my hotel floor. That's great that they're traveling, and it hasn't happened for the last 2 years, I guess. Yeah, last 2 years.
I had a brief conversation with Jerry Henry about predictions and how he sees the world, and we're pretty much in alignment. I would be pleased if this year, end of '22, if we would equal or exceed 19 numbers.
Yep.
I have no expectation of equaling 2021 numbers.
Right. Yeah, and if you do, then yeah.
Yeah, and if we, yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, yeah, it'll set a new, because we're in a time that we have never been there before. 2019 is not even like it is right now.
That's right.
And you hear the news, you're really, they're talking about Branson. I mean, even though it's a national gauge, they're really talking about Branson. When they talk about people don't care how much tickets cost to get on an airplane. They don't care how much it costs to have a vacation. They haven't done it in 2 years. They're going to do it. And one of the things we look at is deposits, cash deposits at banks.
Yeah.
How much is there? Are they? And they've been record numbers. People weren't spending money. We could tell that some of those rates are held lower, just because the deposits are there. But that tells you who's got discretionary income, and so far we haven't seen that change.
And with the size of your firm, the resources that you have behind you
Oh, yeah.
is just
Yeah.
out of this world. I mean, it's a national firm.
Right.
And so when you're able to look at bank balances, savings
Yep.
accounts, yeah, that helps make the
Yeah.
forward projections.
Yeah.
Anybody on the board have any comments, questions, ideas?
I think what we've discussed is really, really good, and
don't you
I
just-
look forward to seeing the changes that you
Good.
have there,
Yeah.
so.
Forward, yeah.
I figured I figured I had a big enough mouth, everybody could hear me without a microphone.
I just want to make sure everybody online can hear you.
So, but anyway, yes, and I agree with you as far as, we just, the last 6 months, from everything that I read or hear, we don't know.
Right.
And
And,
So-
and I'll talk about, I've got other comments that I want to make, just as an additional discussion, but I'll wait till the director's report for that. Good, and we'll continue to modify this and make it obviously more user-friendly.
Sure,
And
sure.
as we do, it'll come back to you guys for comment.
Yeah. Lisa, anything?
No, we will update that, and then we'll get it out and update on the web so the public can see it, and these numbers won't change, but the graphs will be a little
Right.
bit more clear, so
Yes.
we can get them out there. I agree that it is difficult, even on this screen, because if you compare 2019 to current, you don't see that percentage because it's comparing to 2021. So that's important, and it's hard to go back to 2019 when you're looking at with those gaps in years in there. So I don't know if that's something that, the format of this doesn't lend itself, and I don't think it should be changed, but it is important to look at that number.
I'll see, yeah, 19, that's a good comment, though. 19 is a great benchmark year. I'll go back and see what we can do. We've got time to do that today. That's not a problem.
Yeah, so when I just read across the columns, right, and see what the ebbs and flows have been
Right.
for the last 10 years, that, in my mind, that helps establish what a realistic trend would be.
Right, right.
Any questions, comments? Ready to move on? Okay, Ben, what else you got?
Next item is the disbursements, 15,000 and over. I noticed what I've talked to staff about is that the purchasing policy's been changed to 50 grand versus 15,000. Wanted to ask you guys is this at 15,000 enough information? Well, I've got two questions, but is that enough information, or do you want to take this report up to that same $50,000 level?
Maybe explain the question, or clarify that.
Yeah,
What we've done in the past is our city administrator has had the authority for any expenses over 15,000.
right,
So if there was any expenses over 15, they would be presented to this committee.
right,
The board has approved the city administrator's authority up to 50,000. So what Ben's asking is, because of that recent change, would we want to keep this at 15, look at expenses over 15, or be in alignment with what our recent change has been and just look at items over 50,000?
and that would knock two right off the bat. Two items off this, well, three items off this.
Can you speak in the mic just a little bit?
It'll knock a few of these items off, but what it'll leave you with is the really large expenses coming through, which is what I would want to pay attention to as well, because they could be influencers, if you will, down the road.
Yeah.
But we're good either way. It was a
Yeah.
question. But then the second question I had was really related to the discussion I think you had this week in the Board of Aldermen meeting. And that's related to the other disbursement report, which is really a check register you get
Yes.
on a regular basis. It's got, every check that was issued. And I know the comment at that meeting was just an interpretation of what's unusual. And there's several things that obviously can be pointed out, like this round had a threat locker as one of the checks that goes out. Well, that's a cybersecurity system. As Chad starts plugging a lot of those in, it's nice to know that the city's but continues to be safeguarded against what goes on in the public. That's the kind of comment I would want to make. This is here, this is what I'm looking at, if that makes sense.
Sure does. Let's address this.
And we've got a copy of
Pam,
that.
Cody, anybody, do you have an opinion on keeping this at 15 or raising it to 50?
I don't have any problems with raising it to 50.
I mean, it's consistent with what we just did the other night,
Yep,
so
so
I think it makes sense.
there's your answer.
Okay.
We can make this 50.
Okay, we'll do that. We'll
On the
make that comment.
disbursements,
We've got a copy of it too, we can pull up from one of the disbursements, because it is different information. You go to the second page and then kind of zoom in. It's different information, it's more of a check register that goes out. You get this, and it's set up on the meetings as one file for each week that we do, right? And it's got everything from, it's got anything that we spend. It's not bad information. I know when I flip through it, I'm going to pay attention to the lot larger items first, obviously, to see if it's going to influence the future. What I wanted to make sure is I understood what you guys were looking for is really as a board, is really those anomalies or those maybe key points to be aware of.
Let me share a mindset.
Sure.
When I was first elected on the Board of Aldermen, and we would get these reports, and we would get them, I'm going to say, every 2 or 3 months, presented to the board to approve. We weren't approving the expenses, we were approving receipt of these.
Yeah.
But then, as questions would come up throughout the year, this was also used as well, this is another verification from our finances that the Board of Aldermen has approved. I've never viewed this as the board is approving, and I don't want to exaggerate.
Yeah,
but
no, I
there
understand.
are pages and how many pages?
Yeah.
30 pages.
Yeah.
I mean, a crazy
Easily, yeah.
number
Easily.
of text, just
Right.
like this.
Right.
So I don't think it's reasonable for an alderman to be handed 30 of these pages and say, here you go.
Right.
Because then if anything happened down the road, the statement could be made, well, board, you were made aware of it, right?
Yeah.
So I'm trying to avoid that.
Right. Right.
Does that make sense? So I guess what I was asking for is, it's probably good to get this, but from the finance world, and regardless of which expense item it is, but you know what, if we've been running $6,000 for electric and it's 5 to 7,
Yep.
4 to 9, that's not something for us to look at.
Right.
So it's really the anomalies for, in addition to this information, here's some out-of-the-box expenses on this report.
Yeah.
We haven't, this month, or on this report, we had an extra $250,000 that went to blank.
Yep.
Our utility bills haven't been averaging 100,000, and this month they're 160,000.
Right.
Things that are just anomalies.
Yep.
And to have a finance
Kind of perspective.
world
Yep.
pointed out to this board to say, here's some things that are off and you may want to look at.
Yeah. Right.
And when I say off, not wrong,
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
just
yeah.
things to
There-
raise your
yeah.
awareness.
Right. Yeah. That's exactly right. Yeah. And we can do that. I'd personally go through those and do just that. Things that stick out in my mind, make note of those, and that way you can see what's going on. And I think these reports stem back from the day when we were cutting handwritten checks and keeping ledgers in the state of Missouri, not just Branson, state of Missouri. And you were approving every expense that came out. You were literally approving every expense and signing a check at that council meeting. And infinite wisdom of any state governing body, they're not going to change that process. We're going to change how we interpret it, right? And move forward. This is going to be in your packet, but what you just said, that's how we're going to use it.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Any committee member have any questions, comments on that?
No, I think it's good oversight, and you're absolutely right. If the money's already been spent, we're not approving anything, right? I mean, if it's gone, it's gone. We're just reviewing it and saying we recognize that we've saw that this is where it was spent,
Yeah.
so.
Right.
Cody, Ralph, as aldermen, how do you feel when you're given this report? In the mic.
Well, I just, kind of like what you said, I never have anything to really compare it to. So I look at them and say, okay. I mean, I don't have any comparison for it. So it's,
Yeah.
if we write a check for chlorine, I just assume that's what we were supposed to pay for chlorine. And so
Yeah.
I don't have any, and so, I mean, I could see where, but it would be helpful to know if chlorine's normally $2,000, maybe it's just that the cost of that product went up or
Right.
whatever it is. And so, yeah, I get what you're saying. I have nothing to compare it to really other than I look at them every month and
Yeah.
And I think as time goes forward and prices increase on everything,
It's
I
gonna be
think we're going to
important.
see some differences
sure.
in this, and I
Yeah.
think it's good to stay aware of it.
That's right.
I've looked at this report for enough years that I know what's typically on there and stuff. So if something different's there, then I wonder what it is or whatever. But I think as prices increase, we're gonna see, I
You're gonna
think
see
we're
it.
gonna see these
Yep.
amounts go up, so.
What I really think is I need to get my kids to sign up to be basketball and volleyball officials.
So this is an employment
And-
opportunity is what
yeah,
you're
and
saying.
quit being such a drain on their dad.
Amen.
That's funny.
Cindy, I'll be calling
Cindy,
you about
yeah.
that.
That's funny. So, yeah, and so I guess my mindset is, especially when we get new board members, and for that first year, right? They're trying to get their arms around the
Yeah.
world.
Oh, yeah.
And they're being asked on a regular basis, do you approve this?
Yep.
And they're going, yeah, I don't know, I looked through it and
Yeah.
signed my kids up for soccer, but, right? But I mean, I just want it to be
Yeah.
meaningful, I
Yeah.
guess.
Sure, you bet, yeah, and use it.
Could you give us a report on,
I was gonna say,
This
my
last
wife
disbursement?
doesn't even let me look at this. But no, I
maybe you should
definitely,
be abstaining.
I definitely appreciate, kind of the oversight and the forethought in, as a new alderman, again, trying to wrap your mind around all the different committees and all the different things that we're doing. And then, yeah, like, hey, approve this kind of thing, and you're like, well, what am I approving? But yeah, to understand that there's things that are, consistent, and to see those inconsistencies would be, enlightening for me, and it would open up discussion to further verify, why those inconsistencies show up. Is it just a price increase or
Right.
Yeah.
or things like that? So, yeah, I can definitely appreciate that for sure. Thank you.
Because, in my opinion, the board, in my opinion, should not be at the weeds level of understanding all of this, right? I
Yep.
mean, that's information that
Yeah.
should be provided to the
That's right.
board.
That's right.
Your Honor,
Yes.
one of the tiebacks to this that is probably difficult for you to see through this report is, as the board approves contracts, so that
Right.
you're approving anything now over 50,000. So those contracts, then the staff will pull against that contract, and these expenses are up to that amount approved.
Right.
So, for instance, the chlorine, I'm sure utilities have pulled that as a contract, and then so they won't go over your contractual agreement because that's all you approved. So what you're not seeing here is there's contracts behind many of these at a set number to also regulate not going beyond what the board has approved,
Right.
or not to go above the 50,000 that the city administrator has approved at that level, and those are put in there and then drawn against.
Yep.
So I don't think that background of how that ties back to your approval
Yep.
process isn't shown here to make it
Right.
really clear that you have given some check and balances that you probably don't even realize that it's checked by the finance department.
Well, yeah, and so I think,
That would be information that would be somewhat helpful too. It's not in that report.
well, at 10,000 feet, I think it should be one or the other. If the board is being asked to approve it, either let's not have the board approve it and trust that the things we've approved, the things we've signed, the directors are following the contracts and everything's done properly, and just trust that process. Or if we're being asked to approve it, we need to understand it, because I'm going to tell you, the board just blindly says, yep, this is good, yep, this is, and they do that every couple months.
Yep.
Is that right?
Right. But I
Cody,
guess
you're laughing?
my point is you've already approved some of it, and
Yeah,
it's
right,
hard.
right. There,
We look
there's,
at it.
Hmm?
We look at it.
this is one of those.
But you don't understand what you're looking at.
This is one of those items I would clarify as obvious detail. When just if you think about the governing body as a whole, your policymaking body, finance committee is no different. Citywide policymaking body. One of the most important, obviously, functions you do is set policy. Any information that can feed that policy change is going to be important. I think at the very low rung on that ladder is this. Because like you had mentioned, this is after the fact. Before this comes through, you're going to have already talked about the contract. Before the contract, you should have already talked to the department about what the strengths and weaknesses, or maybe the threats that they're looking at. If you continually see me at a budget, then we got a problem. I'm not the one that drives the snowplow. I'm not the one that picks up the trash. I love to fight fires, but my wife won't let me drive a truck. I can barely get a ride along in a police car, for that matter, in her mind. But those are the guys that are out front doing the work. So by the time that you get to this, you kind of know what's going on. You got the
Yeah.
big picture.
Yeah.
What this is just batting cleanup. If there's something in here that sticks out in your brain, maybe there's a question on it, or oh, we're moving forward with this project now, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Yeah.
I heard you say that bothers you to, that there's a concern about approving, which I understand, and it's an acknowledgement, because there have already been checks written. So it's after the fact, obviously. We could move this up to the consent agenda, where it's just being presented, and it's just moved on through, and if there was questions, it could be brought down. It depends on how much approval process that you want. It's honestly, this part on the Board of Aldermen, it's always been done this way. And so I think that process could be changed if it was the desire of the board.
And I could add to that, with a new ERP, you could dump this into Excel and actually sort out the little stuff, and then get to that $50,000, literal $50,000 level, so you're only seeing the big checks come through. That's gonna take 30 pages, maybe down to 8. And then you're really gonna get the meat of the matter. That's what I would look at giving you, because it's a little absurd to debate a multi-million-dollar budget and look at expense going out for youth baseball official at $15. Even though that's helpful for our kids to get a job, here's what they're paying.
Yeah, I want to know what Tyler did for $15. Pam, do you agree with maybe amending this to just excess of 50,000?
I do.
Cody?
This report?
Yeah. Well, don't tell me, tell your microphone.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so let's move on, let's do that.
So do you want it still a separate review or acknowledgement, or could we just move it up to consent agenda,
Consent
and then
agenda,
you don't?
Yes.
Okay,
Put it on consent?
okay, and then, you can always.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Put everything on consent agenda. We'll knock these meetings out real
I
fast.
can make that
Exactly.
happen.
You'll have record meetings. Yeah, good.
Okay, does that conclude your
Yeah,
presentation?
that's perfect. That's exactly what I wanted to hear.
We have some time here. Any questions for Ben as we move forward? Ben, your firm has been employed in the past to do our annual city audits.
Yes, we have.
And we're
And I was doing them, yeah.
within a couple days. Our audits are due by the end of this month?
Yeah, this is the world we live in as bond advisors as well. Typically, your CAF, or your annual financial report, is filed by June 30. If it's not filed by June 30, then what happens is we file a disclosure, an event disclosure, that says that the filing will be late. We expect it to be filed by July 30th or 31st, right? So that's been done with both the state auditor's office and the website Emma that tracks all the bond issues and all the investors. It's not unusual to do that, especially the situation you guys are in right now.
So what I think I just heard you say is today is June 30th.
It is.
So today is the deadline.
Is the deadline.
So we have already filed and asked for July 31st.
Right.
Okay.
And that's more of a notice than it is permission. This is just a notice to the investing public. It's coming, but we expect it to be the end of July.
That's good to know.
Yep.
Okay.
And out of 15 clients, I've got 4 of them that do exactly that every single year. I'm trying to get them moved up.
Yeah.
But sometimes it falls down to the auditor's schedule too. And I know right now they're in the process with Jolene and a couple others writing those financial statements, the final financial statements, along with the notes. And they've been doing that for a week or so now. So we should have something, we expect to have something come through for the July meeting.
When your firm has done the audit in the past, do you have a ballpark number of files that you would be looking at from our finance department to conduct our annual city audit?
Yeah,
Hundreds? Thousands?
Probably, yeah, hundreds, yeah.
Hundreds?
Yeah, and the audits are really now based on risk.
Okay?
So what's the risk of a misstatement in your financial statements? They'll look at internal controls processes, and any kind of weakness is where they zero in on. That weakness that they may be perceived as a weakness. Some firms just set that risk tolerance to 100%, meaning everything's at risk, and we're just going to sample, 50, 65 expenses out of each, process. They don't do A to Z.
Yeah.
Because it would cost
Yeah,
way too much.
sure.
Yeah. But they'll hit the key parts of procurement as it complies with your procurement policy. As POs get developed, are purchase orders actually encumbered correctly? Are they encumbered based on a contract, or is it just a thought?
Sure.
Which are two different things.
But it would be less than 1,000 files?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And that's a good
We
question.
haven't been here long enough. We can adjourn.
No, I've got more for you.
Before we go in, it's kind of backtracking, can we get a motion on that 50, that I'm hearing from over here? So we get too far that we can get to the $50,000.
I would entertain a motion to
For dis-
increase the amount that's on this, our distribution list at $50,000 and above. Is that clear?
Yes.
So moved.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Ayes have it. Anything else you need over there?
Yes. The disbursements that we actually presented on the agenda, we need to approve those also. We can go back. Cindy, can you bring them back up, please?
You probably want to acknowledge them because there's no approval because they're already
They
done.
already
That's
done
what I mean, I'm sorry.
So just make sure.
I'll make a motion to acknowledge.
More information.
I didn't know that, excuse me, I didn't know this committee, I thought it was just the Board of Aldermen acknowledged these.
No, we always do.
We do?
Yeah, we do it every time.
I think that's a question, though. I mean, that's a question that we could probably talk about, is how we use this committee. That's exactly what
I'm
we've.
sorry, I didn't
we ought to
realize that
consider,
this
yeah.
committee also approved those disbursements.
We do, yeah, every month. We approve it. I mean, as part of the agenda, we vote on it because I'm usually the one who makes a motion.
You want to make a motion?
I just did.
I think the
Make a
question
motion.
is what is being asked is
Yeah.
if that's needed, because it's a review.
And I'm lining it up really with the disbursement information that's going to go to the full board. This is very similar. It's just very similar. There are expenses that have already gone out. And if we're going to make that information, then maybe this should just be informational as well.
Right, but I think they have to have a motion. This time, no? No?
Yeah, so
There's
we have a
nothing-
motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor of acknowledging receiving the disbursements, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Ayes have it. Thank you.
So can we have that discussion that in the future, is that necessary from the finance committee is where we're at?
Yep,
That's what he's asking.
yeah.
So not voting on it at all or moving it to the consent agenda, which is what you recommended, Cody?
The disbursements that go to full board are going to the consent agenda. What we're talking about on this one is just this, the page that's up on the wall now. This would just be for information. It's much like the financial reports. You're receiving it for information. And we would just do that, stick this in the report so you have it.
Yeah, yeah, we'll review this every month.
Right, you'll
at
still
this
have it.
committee.
It's just a matter of where does it go on the agenda.
Oh, where does it go on the Board of Aldermen agenda?
This
Or
one
on
doesn't.
this agenda?
This one only goes, this
This
format-
only comes here?
Yes, right. That larger one goes to the full board, and it goes on the consent.
Yeah.
I think as long as we can look at it and
Yeah.
ask any questions
Sure.
about it, I don't know that we have to, I mean, because voting is kind of like, it's, again.
But you're
like
right,
I
this
said,
redundant.
doesn't, but this doesn't go to the Board of Aldermen. Yeah,
So,
Right.
anyway,
Yeah.
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 So we'll do that. Next month, we'll do that. We'll drop it down to the financial reports and make sure it goes in there. And you'll see it. You'll still see it. It'll just be listed as an exhibit within that staff report. So you'll have it. With that, I did want to kind of give you a picture for what the rest of the year might look like.
Great.
This afternoon, I'm really looking forward to talking to the directors about the budget calendar. And Lisa's limited me for 2 hours with those guys. I really look forward to having that conversation because every budget process across the nation is different for every government. I can lay the structure, the skeleton of what we need, but then as a department, as a city, a leadership team, they bolt on the nuts and bolts. I mean, they're the ones that add everything else on and where it goes. So what I imagine doing, the first step is going to be in July. My intent is to bring back to you guys a presentation that shows, and you already had this, but a presentation that shows where you were last year, where you are year to date, and what we think you're going to be at the end of the 22. The second item is how that would feed what 23 looks like. I want to have a discussion around what those forecast items are. I mean, when I give my staff back in Kansas City the financials, the detailed financials, they immediately sorted the top 10 revenue sources. And then they're starting to work on what do those look like into the future. So they probably already have a picture and they just haven't told me yet what 22 looks like. Sure. What I want to do is have that discussion with you guys. And what that does is set up a guideline, if you will, as we progress down the budget. You're going to obviously Missouri, you're going to see no tax increase. You're going to see pay increases that are benchmarked at a certain level, like 3% COLA or whatever you guys use here. I haven't had the discussion yet. Sales tax is benchmarked at 3, 4, 5, whatever that might look like. And then the justification behind it so you can actually reflect or kind of have input on what that looks like. And there may be some other ones. You know, what does loggers look like? What's it been in the past? Maybe some of the key challenges we may be looking at going down the road with departments. It may not be with numbers. It may just be, here's what we're looking at right now. I mean, city administrator is a perfect example. You've had turnover in leadership. What's that do to the 22 budget? It's not going to inform the 23 budget, but it will give us an idea what is going to happen this year. That's the kind of discussion. Ahead of the whole budget process, I want to start there. That way you guys have an ability to set the borders, the boundaries for us as we move forward. Then after that, obviously, department directors and myself will be getting together to talk capital and operating. We've got an opportunity, obviously, to simplify the budget process. With one of us here, you used to have two, we're probably going to streamline it a little bit. We're still going to use this committee as that sounding board, which is exactly what I'm used to. The more successful processes have a finance committee that can get down in the dirt sometimes in ahead of a board meeting. That way you guys have a lot more knowledge before that board meeting happens. And you can make the statement at the full board, well, we talked about X, Y, and Z, and this is what it means to me. That way you guys can advocate what that budget, what that information is. You have an ability to ask a department director what's going on within a certain item, and then you can reflect that back to the board, if that makes sense. A lot of sense. So that's the way we'll use it. What I intend to do is bring that calendar back. I'm not creating that by myself. We're going to do that this afternoon and kind of reflect on where you've been in the past and where we want to go in the future. I've always believed that if you see me in a budget process more than you see a department director, then A, we don't have a person in that slot, or B, I'm talking way too much. You need to hear from them. They're the ones out on the front line doing the work. Now, with that being said, I haven't said that to them, and we'll figure out what that looks like. But we'll bring a calendar back at that time, too. The rest of the year, what that rest of the 6 months look like, so you can reflect on that as well. So we use that meeting for that. In my interpretation, we are not late in the budget process. This is exactly where I've got two other communities in Missouri about the same size. We actually start in July collecting information from the departments. We usually target the end of September, usually October, for budget workshops. We'll be using this committee as we move along, and I'll obviously work with Lisa on when we schedule it. Right now, it's routine where it's going to be scheduled. If we need an additional one, I'm sure we could probably work something out, which you've done probably in the past anyway. That's just a little bit of what is in my head. But I want to use this as more of a sounding board before we go to the full board.
I have a question. Are you going to be using the priority-based budgeting tool that we've used in the past?
The tool, no. The thought process, yes. We'll use that internal. It adds a lot of time to the schedule. I believe in PBB, and I know how to do it. But sometimes it can be overthought. It's good guidance to have when you start prioritizing capital, and for that matter, FTEs. When you think about, and this is going to sound inhuman, but FTEs in my mind are really inventory of what you need to actually do the services you're providing. So those two pieces need to line up to objectives, which are really what that PBB is all about. Ideally, the board would have a retreat around objectives and goals. This being July, obviously we don't have enough time for that. We're going to bolt those on to the objectives of the departments. And as you see those come through, you're going to see priorities and what they see as a priority within their department and be able to reflect on that. What about, and you can have a conversation then, well, what about this project last year that was the top project we had? We haven't gotten to it yet. Is there something that jumped over it? So 5-year CIP is a 5-year CIP. It ought to be just updated, not rethought, updated. Because you've already debated it. So we're going to slide things over, update those numbers, drop 23 in there. You can recognize a lot of the same projects because that priority shouldn't have changed unless there's something that occurred at a department level to make it change.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I agree with that. You have something, Cody?
Well, that just makes a whole lot more sense to me to, I was on the board for, I think, 2 or 3 months last year when we started the priority-based budgeting.
I'm
and
sorry.
Here I am telling, directors, hey, I don't think what you put on here is important because I gave it this score. And that always just seemed, you're saying that without saying it, right?
Right.
And it just seems it seemed odd to me when each director in their department knows what their needs are and knows how to prioritize those needs. And so I like what you had to say about that, and I get the idea behind it, but I don't know, it just was an odd experience for me to go through personally.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
thank you.
And PBB works for very, very large organizations, St. Louis or Kansas City. It works for them because they've got tons of money and tons of political issues they got to hammer out. So they need the detail. They need the performance measurements to actually justify something happening. In this case, you're less that way. You've got a great leadership team that can actually tell you what's going on out in their world. Then you can reflect on that. Because as a policymaking body, you ran for a reason. You're sitting right in those seats for a reason. And there may be certain things that are in your mind that we need to take care of. That's the kind of feedback we need. In fact, the best place to do that is going to be in July. When we start talking about what's on your mind, here's what's on our mind on the forecast and how we're moving forward with the budget. What input do you guys have? And we'll keep doing that every time. But it's unfair to think that you guys are going to be experts, at what they do.
A couple things, Ben. Something that's real important, and I know it's on your list to do, and you're working on that. But the Board of Aldermen and this committee, we really need to get our arms around a 5-year forecast. Because today, we are making financial decisions, capital decisions, and it would sure be more comforting to see that here's where we're projected to be,
That's right.
and if you make this change.
That's exactly right, Mayor. The forecast, I should have qualified that. The forecast we bring back in July will be at least a 3-year look forward. Years 4 and 5 are sheer guess. But it can still be there. Bond agencies look for a 5-year forecast.
Yeah.
That's not an issue. You have more control on your
3-year?
Yeah, right, the 3-year up front.
Perfect.
But that's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah. I know we learned in our retreat that each department tracks their finances in Excel.
Right.
So I'm assuming when you do meet the directors, meet with them, whatever they have in Excel will be something that you can easily import.
Yeah. Yes, we're going to talk about that this afternoon as well. Is what they get, what they need to be able to stop using Excel. Some issues just require it because the system doesn't do it. And really, they could be in the capital project world where you're talking about a year-to-year budget, capital projects are multi-year. So that's where I usually most often see those spreadsheets being developed. And I know we're going to tackle that as we go down the road on ERP, because I know Chad's doing somewhat of a needs assessment now. That's
Yep.
part of that needs assessment. It should be project management.
And that should be on the top, right?
Right. Yeah,
I mean, there is a huge need for that.
yeah,
Right, the ERP, when we talked in our retreat about the current software we're
Right.
using.
yeah.
Right.
And that's been kicked off too.
Yeah. Not a high priority. I know we have many that I consider higher priorities, but on your list of things to do, I've asked a couple times to get some information on our investment funds.
Yep, that's
I
on
don't
my
know
list.
what funds we have, how
Yep.
many we have, when the money moves in, when the
Yeah.
money moves out. Do we have sweep accounts set up? I mean, I
Right.
just don't have any information.
Yep.
And I know that's an arm within your firm. And so guidance on
Where you're
how
at,
we're,
right.
because I mean, there's millions of dollars sitting there. Are we maximizing?
Right.
Right.
That's definitely on my list.
Yeah.
I was wanting to bring it today, but somebody can invent a 48-hour day, then my life would be a lot easier.
Yeah, and there again, a topic like that, I see that as that doesn't have any paramount importance today.
Yeah.
Today, we've got
This
some
information,
real,
yeah, that'd be nice
we
to
have some
have.
real important things, yeah.
Yeah.
Any other questions from the board? Any questions from anybody in the audience?
I have a question, just for those out there. How do you feel about this new process? Are you excited about it? I mean, really, it's turning it back over to you all to guide us in the decision process that we make. Is this something that you're looking forward to? Good.
Ted gave a thumbs up.
I'd say-
Jan shaking his head. Kendall, thumbs up.
Good. Okay. Well,
Michael doesn't know what question was that.
and as he said earlier, y'all are the ones who have to, you know this stuff. I can remember when I made the motion against when we were going to give the program where the police officers could buy their own guns or whatever, and I was thinking, oh, that's not, we can't make them buy their own or whatever, and then I found out very quickly that they wanted to. So, I mean, they know what goes on in their department. I can sit here and assume all day long. So now I've got the chief up here after me. Oh, no.
Uh-oh.
So you ask. The priority-based budgeting that he talked about and the tool that we've been using, I've always had issues with that tool. I think the priority-based budgeting that you want of us is for us to sit down as directors and for Ben to say, here's the bucket of money that we have this year. And then we prioritize the projects that we have. Kendall's always going to come out on top, stealing from Cindy probably, but we do that and then bring it to you.
Yes.
As
'Cause you know
opposed
what you
to
need.
you guys trying to figure out a truck versus a water line or new softball field or
Or an
whatever.
outhouse.
Yeah, I think that truck far exceeds the importance of the water line, Kendall.
You
No,
don't
but-
remember the porta
That's a-
potty?
good-
Chief, you
good
made an
reminder.
excellent point. At your level, you know what you need versus us telling you what you need.
And what he's talking about is maybe something new that they haven't done before. In my prior life, departments would prioritize their projects. I call that the selfish prioritization, right?
Sure.
Then when they walk in the room at the second meeting, they're going to put a citywide hat on. They're going to put a city manager hat on. Then they're going to look at through another lens.
Yep.
That's what he's talking about.
Yeah.
That's what we want to do this year. That way, when it comes to you guys, we've got kind of a consensus on where we are, especially with capital.
Excellent.
Now everybody's gonna
Yeah.
start.
Yeah, everybody, I
That's
want to
good.
hear
We want to
from
get
them. Yeah.
feedback.
Yeah.
No, the answer's no, Ken.
I'm only standing up here because the chief got up first. So real quick, utilities is unique, right? So we have water sewer funds. I don't have to compete for general funds for Cindy or for police or fire or planning department. So all of our vehicles and equipment all are funded by our rates. But where now within internally, what I look at during the budget process is what is our priorities internally as a department for pump replacements, for vehicle replacements. That's right. So we are doing that already internally. I just wanted to kind of build that confidence in you that we are doing that. Now, where the priority-based project or priority-based process would come into play, or the theme or the concept for us and other departments would be like with the tourism funds, because obviously we share those funds with Keith for streets and all. So that's something that where as a city, as a group, as you group, we look at the tourism dollars and say, okay, what's our priority? Do we need subdivision rehabilitation for waterline improvements, or do we need this new public road, or a combination of both? So that's where I could see when we're competing for those funds with other departments, where the priority-based budgeting topic would come more into play. But
Thank you very much, Kendall. Anybody else want to share?
Ted, you're not going to get up and say anything?
Oh, that's good. We can call them out one at a time.
Yeah.
Keith, get ready.
I think I appreciate his comments on the priority-based budgeting, recognizing the value that it kind of brought forward. Back to your point, Alderman, about you were making decisions without our input necessarily. And I think it came forward as a process that was identifiable to make the priorities work in our favor. And then last year, for example, we had in the fire department some 4 or 5 projects, and it was almost exactly opposite of what we saw as a priority versus what this governing body identified operationally. And so I came back to the finance director and I said, operationally, this is where we see this, and it was very open that it was time to revise those definitions, that some of the definitions in PBB were not current to our day to day. And so I was kind of looking forward to the opportunity to see that if we're still going to use that process to change those definitions, to get more engagement with the directors. We're in the process now of redoing our projects to bring forward, as you set that direction here coming soon, but more in a grant format of what's the problem, what's the financial need, some photographs to back it up, some data to back up why this vehicle's had so much maintenance. Keith's crew kind of has done that in the past, so we were getting ready to load the weapons, so to speak, to come back stronger this year. And I think this new support of Baker Tilly is going to make us rocket this year, I hope.
Good. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you.
I mean, I think it's very important for us as this group to hear what your thoughts are as we get ready to start into the budget process. Yeah.
I never get to come to the podium to speak, so this is really all that's about for me. No, I guess what I would say from my perspective as one director and one voice in that group, it's refreshing to hear that we're all coming to the table. We're all going to understand what the other department's priorities are. I have absolute confidence that if I have a priority and I look at this list and there's 3 other departments that have needs that clearly are more important right now, we're going to table that and we're going to work on that next year and let them have their opportunity or the funds they need to push their projects forward. I have complete confidence we'll do that. I think it's also a good opportunity to look at funding sources and talk about and share ideas. For example, the item you just approved on Tuesday for it's $250,000 for network switches. We had to do an amendment to the general fund to find some money for that, right? Some capital dollars. Well, when you think about that, those switches are in use for tourism-related things. They're in use for utilities heavily uses those for their entire SCADA network. They might be the largest user, yet the general fund is picking up that burden for every bit of that. And I'm not sure that's the best way to approach that. And so it gives more opportunity to spread that out, ease burden on other funds, and fairly have each fund pay for what they're genuinely using, right? And so I think that's going to give opportunities to find those, those things as well. And so for all those reasons, and I would say Baker Tilly and what Ben's doing so far, I've had minimal interaction with them, but I'm very impressed. And so, yeah, I'm very optimistic.
Thank you for sharing that. That that may be a big pearl right there to help our general fund.
I believe so, and that's one example. And most of everything we do in IT, you can look at it from that same lens, and we haven't always done that. So in fact, we haven't done that at all.
So as you visit with Ben, openly share that.
Yeah.
We do that a lot in my industry. It's called shared services. And we all get charged accordingly to how much we use or how little we use. And so I think that's a fresh and great perspective that's coming out of just this conversation.
Yep. Thank you, Chad. Did you have something?
Yeah, I was going to say, in some of the presentations from department heads that I've been part of, I know within those interdepartments, they've been very collaborative and very creative in what they do. And kind of what I'm seeing here is intra-department collaboration, where you guys will see the bigger picture and you can collaborate together. So it's kind of like now the right hand knows what the left hand's doing, and it keeps everybody on equal playing field, and there's no jockeying for position. Like, everybody knows where they're at. And I think that's a great thing, and kind of just goes back to just that open communication between departments and between the board and those departments, and really making sure that, everybody's on firm ground when we make decisions. And I think that's super important moving forward.
You just stole my topic that I was going to say.
On the HR committee also, thank you.
The one thing I wanted to say is it's going to de-silo our budgeting process, because currently, or the way it had been done in the past, is it was kind of, our request kind of went into a black hole, and we were competing against each other as opposed to working together. And that's the kind of thing that I'm looking forward to, having everybody sitting around the table and saying, Jeff, you've hired enough people, or with that kind of thing. And we need to bring the bottom end of the pay scale up, those kinds of things, so everybody can see what the priorities are going to be.
Yeah, and an example of that, and I know we want to do that here on a daily basis with all the departments, but I'll tell you, that retreat we had was very eye-opening for me. I would like to see us maybe every 6 months have a retreat where we all get together and take the walls down and share.
Well, I was kidding about Jeff hiring too many people. We need to hire a bunch more over there. But the premise of, the big thing that what I see is the fact that we've got, these things are just too short, I'm telling you.
I wonder if we could get a new, Lisa, could we get a new mic stand that adjusts?
I'll just lean over. But when it comes to that, we've got some big personnel expenses coming up whenever we're looking at our staffing study and things like that. So that's an area that's going to be new territory for all of us as directors, is saying, okay, we need to, the pace of how we inculcate these things, we need to figure that out so that, we still have a budget to meet, or revenues that we can't spend beyond, and those kinds of things. So we need to figure out what our internal priorities are for those kinds of things. So it's a big deal coming up, and I think this process is going to lend itself very well to that.
Yep, I agree with that.
I would like to compliment this committee for asking that. This committee is a committee about the finances of the city of Branson, and everybody here, the directors, are part of that finances. Instead of about just a finance committee, it's about the finances of the city of Branson. And I think there's a little bit of mindset change that it's encompasses everybody here, and so that they are involved, and it's refreshing, and I think everybody would say that's refreshing, but it is the committee of the finances of all departments, of everybody. So thank you for asking and recognizing that.
Yep. Thank you, Lisa.
Wouldn't it be awesome for December's report to have the two chiefs fighting over who can tell you what the sales tax is going to do in '23. You're not going to hear it from me. Let them do it. That's the kind of information they need, right?
That will be interesting.
When we started this eons ago, back in a prior life, we did it as a reaction to 2008's recession, and it took the entire city to
Sure,
figure out how to
sure.
react to that. But that next year, my payroll clerk was retiring, and I didn't have a backup. And the city council was not seeing the importance. So part of that process, the police chief got up and argued my budget for me because her cops weren't going to get paid. I got the position only because she got up and talked about the importance of that position. But that was an example of how common knowledge can help drive a city.
You bet.
We're going to do that. I'm going to dominate a lot of their time, but I think they're open to that.
Yeah, I know initially it will be more time consuming, but I think it'll lay the groundwork for the future. Yeah. Did you have anything else?
That's it. That's all I have.
Nobody in the audience? Keith, you're just scratching your head. You're good? You're good with the world?
Oh, come on, Keith.
We were almost done.
Keith got Gretna Road open.
I,
He can
I-
say whatever he wants right now.
I did want to, before we close today, I just want to give a hand because Gretna Road
Gretna Road opened this
opened a
morning.
day ahead of schedule, so promises kept, promises delivered, right?
Wow.
Exceeding expectations,
Wow,
so.
that's huge.
Great
Thank you,
job.
Keith.
You know, I'll just, tag on to what Jeff said about the priority-based budgeting. There was a lot of the stuff that seemed out of date, when we would put our requests in and things like that. Some of the things that we really felt that was a safety issue were just bypassed, for a better word, and were not funded. And one of them was our Celtic Bridge project, which MoDOT rated it at a 12-ton. And there's two other entrances into Taney-Como Acres, which are low-water crossings. And if it flooded, the emergency vehicles couldn't get in or out unless you helicoptered in. And the bridge was only rated for, like what I said, 12 tons. It's 24,000 pounds. A school bus weighs over 25,000 pounds. So we had to call the school district, tell them not to keep using that bridge, use the low-water crossings. So in turn, if we had a flood, school buses couldn't get across it either. They had to use the low water crossings, which were not accessible. So and when it got bypassed and passed over, I just couldn't understand that. So that's like Ted said, we all know what our priorities are and our needs are. We've got lots of wants out there, but that's not what our needs are, and that wouldn't be good spending of, our citizens' tax dollars and visitors. But the other part I want to mention, like I said, the Gretna Road is open this morning, which is a huge undertaking, and, it all happened, and it wasn't just because of what we done on our engineering department. I had staff that went out right at the drop of a hat, dropped everything else, pulled the plans together and the bid documents, got it out to bid, got it to the contractor. And I can't say enough good about them. Public Works Department went out and got the temporary road, fixed back open, and they just done an awesome job. And then I'll tag on one more thing, that our new street lights that we've been putting in on Highway 76 the last couple of weeks, they'll be turned on tonight.
Wow.
We lacked 3 light poles, one waiting on concrete to cure, and a couple of conduit replacements for a couple of them, but that was all done up the stairs in our engineering department, and we had to recreate the plans because we didn't know where the project was stopped and what was in the ground and what wasn't in the ground. So our Wayne Glenn, I have to give him that credit for creating those plans and bid documents. He done an excellent job, and so they'll be turned on tonight, though.
That's exciting. And
It
that was a
is.
good example with that bridge that you're talking about. That goes back to, what the priorities are. And there is a difference between wants and needs, right?
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. But anyway, I appreciate this opportunity to be doing it this way this year, and I think it's gonna go really well. Thanks again.
Thanks.
You know what I love the most is I love how each department's willing to look at the other department's priorities and saying, gosh, I I don't have to have it right now, and they need what they need worse. And that's culture. And you can't buy it, you can't teach it. It is just something that is in you, and I love that. And I appreciate every single member of the staff, and I'm so proud of the work that you do in our city, and you represent all of us so well. And thank you.
Boy, I will ditto that. I am more and more impressed with the leaders that we have within our city. This form of government wants to put you in charge of your departments. You know what's best, and we're here to support you. And I hope you all are getting that culture change. That being said, is there any, Ben, you're done? Lisa, do you have any closing comments?
No, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else?
Happy Independence Day.
Happy
Celebrate our freedom.
Independence Day. Hearing none, I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you very much, Ben. Thank you very much.